The legendary Roots Crew, and you're listening to right now, We at Radio. Stay tuned, stay locked.
September is here already, folks, and the summer's almost gone, but the good thing is, it's my birthday month, all right, and it's time for the Education Town Hall on We at Radio. We're coming to you live from the heart of historic Anacostia, here in Southeast, Ward 8, Washington, D.C., down the street from the big chair. I first want to begin by thanking the Creator for this day and the opportunity to present to you the latest installment of the Education Town Hall. This is your humble servant and host, Thomas Bird. But before getting started with the show, I want to first thank those who have supported this show financially. I'd like to sincerely thank DC Boys, the 21st Century School Fund, the Senior High Alliance of Parents, Principals, and Educators, also known as SHAPE. I want to thank the Washington section of the National Council of Negro Women, the Ward 5 Council on Education. I want to thank our dear friend Deborah Robinson. And I want to thank all the anonymous donors who have contributed to this show. And I do indeed want to thank our major sponsor, the Washington Teachers Union, under the leadership of Elizabeth Liz Davis. We really appreciate all our sponsors. And folks, if you or your organization believes that this is an important platform to give everyone access to the public square, then help us ensure that it remains available by offering your financial support. So please contact me at thomas.bird@yahoo.com. That's thomas.byrd@yahoo.com. thomas.bird@yahoo.com. We really appreciate your support. All right, folks, I think we're going to have a great show in store for you today. I know I always say that, and it's good to be back in the studio. We've been on a bit of a hiatus for the summer, but we're just starting to ramp back up, and we're glad that you are with us today. Pretty soon we're going to be joined by Julian Vasquez Heilig, who's with the NAACP, and we're going to talk about charter schools and a moratorium of the same, on the same. Then later on, we're going to be joined by our friend Jesse Turner, who's going to be talking about SOS and plans for the coalition. And I'm sure our dear friend Denisha Jones is probably going to call in at some point in time. Yeah, she's on the line now. I got the thumbs up. So we want to thank all our guests for being with us today, and we're going to get to them momentarily. But first, we're going to swing over to our feature reporter, Virginia Spatz, for her weekly feature report. Good morning, Virginia, and take it away.
Good morning, Thomas. Thanks. One of my earlier ideas for this week's feature report was a call for educators to inform themselves and their students about the history of the Star-Spangled Banner. This would provide some context for recent flaps around athletes standing, not standing, covering their hearts or not, and for those familiar with Baltimore customs, shouting out the O or not. Teachers might include a few words about the 20th century Chicago columnist Mike Royko, whose alter ego, Slats Grobnik, struggled humorously for decades with if and how singing the national anthem at sporting events related to patriotism. Such studies could start the school year with some intellectual rocket's red glare, lighting the way for students to look more deeply into the background of current events and to seek broader perspectives on any issue before pronouncing on it. But we are heading into Labor Day weekend, and for those local to the District of Columbia, that means the 28th Annual DC Blues Society Free Music Festival. So I also want to put in a plug for Blues in the Schools. The project says, through the study of blues traditions in any curriculum, educators can address educational issues like the color line, diversity, multiculturalism, and interdisciplinary studies in a way that engages all age students. The Blues Society notes in particular that blues is an opportunity to give students deeper understanding of rural and urban African American culture, and they remind us that such study is an investment in the human spirit. Learn more about their programs at blues.org. In addition, Take Me to the River, the 2014 documentary about an intergenerational exploration of the Memphis music scene, offers a living history curriculum. In addition, also, the fictional series The Get Down provides a great opportunity to engage older students in exploring the intertwining of music and U.S. history. So I want to encourage educators to take advantage of the many great resources for blues education, along with some background on the Star-Spangled Banner as the school year begins. Visit educationtownhall.org for related resources. This is Virginia Spatz reporting for the Education Town Hall on We Act Radio, powered by Ethical Electric.
All right. Thank you so much, Virginia, for that feature report. And, say. I just had to get that in. Boy, we need to talk about that. That's interesting. All right, folks, as I mentioned, we're going to be joined by Julian Vasquez Heilig of the NAACP. But before I go to him, I ask him to indulge me for a moment because I just want to get in a PSA real quick. I want to mention, folks, about let you know that the Black Love Festival is coming up here in the District of Columbia on September 18, 2016. It's going to be held at the Gateway DC Pavilion, which is on MLK Avenue in Southwest. A tribute to Black Lives Matter will be going on, and other activities. If you want more information, you can go to Black Love Fest. That's Black LUVFEST.com, blacklovefest.com for additional information. That's, again, on September the 18th, 2016, from 11 to 7 p.m. If you have an opportunity, please come out. All right. Now we're going to turn to someone who's no stranger to the show, who's been here before, Julian Vasquez Heilig. How you doing? Hello? Are you there? Denisha, are you there?
I'm here.
Hello.
Can you hear us?
Okay.
Can you hear us? I'm here, Julian.
Can you hear us?
Yeah, now I can.
Okay.
Fantastic. All right. Thank you so much for taking time out of your busy schedule to join us today. Just to remind folks, why don't you reintroduce yourself? It's been a while since you've been on the show, so please reintroduce yourself. Give us a little bit about your background and the work that you're doing.
Great. So glad to be back on the show. I am a professor of ed policy and leadership at California State University, Sacramento. I also serve as the education chair for the California NAACP, but I have to give a disclaimer that my views don't necessarily represent those of California State University or the NAACP or any of the other organizations that I'm so fortunate to work with. So I'm just excited to talk with you about the research that's out there on charter schools. I wanted to say one other thing, about what the reporter said before she came on. In my history classes, I never knew that Francis Scott Key was a racist. I didn't know that the third verse of the Star-Spangled Banner basically celebrated the fact that slaves were oppressed. Francis Scott Key said that black folks were a distinct and inferior race of people, which all experience proves to be the greatest evil that afflicts a community. So, that's a real concern. Here in California, we're working really hard to get ethnic studies into schools. There is a coalition of ethnic studies now that's doing that. And this history has just been erased. So, I want to thank Colin Kaepernick, for really bringing this issue to the attention of the nation. that, really the systemic racism goes back hundreds of years, even into our national anthem.
I have to wonder if he actually knew all of what you just said prior to his demonstration.
But a lot of that, I do have to say, this is Virginia here, a lot of that came out when Gabby Douglas was just minding her own business and didn't happen to put her hand over her heart.
Yeah.
And so a lot of this came out at that point.
Yeah.
Yeah.
That's
a good point.
Yeah, but it's I didn't know that, and you're right, ethnic studies are definitely needed, because there's so many things that go on in this country that the masses don't know, and we really need to know. Is the majority engages in this misinformation campaign. They've been doing it for generations, and so we've got to unearth the truth and spread the word. All right, but we could talk about that the whole show, but I want to get into talking about charter schools and the NAACP calling for a moratorium on charter schools. I'm surprised by that position. So, can you share with us how the NAACP came to that? Because to me, I think they have been on the wrong side on education issues, but now that we're on the same side, so I want to know how that came about.
Okay. Well, so I think first it's important to understand that I think. Again, disclaimer, I'm not speaking for the California NAACP this morning. But I think it's important to understand that I think folks are really sensitive to the fact that there are charter schools out there run by African Americans that are doing a great job. But what we're really talking about is a vision for education that was first invented by a man named Milton Friedman, who later won the Nobel Prize in the 1970s in economics. And his idea was that we would create a market of schools to reduce the role of government and democracy in schools. So an academic, a professor, actually invented this idea of market-based approaches to schools. And then what he did was he actually went to Chile and sat down with the dictator there, and the dictator said, yeah, let's do this. Let's do universal choice for every kid. And what happened was Chile became one of the wealthiest countries in South America, but it also became the most unequal country. Because what markets do is they create inequality. Markets create winners and losers. And that's what you see happening with charter schools in New Orleans, is that the wealthy and white kids primarily get access to the top tier of schools, and then black folks, black kids, they are still going to C, D, and F schools in New Orleans. It's called market segmentation. That's what happens in markets. There's winners and losers, because in a market you have to have capital to spend. So it's important, I think, to understand the roots of this conversation. Now, the NAACP has made statements on this in the past. In 2010, they said that charter schools were separate and unequal. That's what the resolution said in 2010. 2014, they equated charter schools to private control and privatization in the resolution that was passed and approved by the board in 2014. And then this most recent resolution that has only been passed by the membership, which is more than 2,000 delegates, and has yet to be voted on. That will happen in October by the National Board if it becomes official policy. The National Board can still say no. At that point, then it will become national policy. But in this resolution in 2016, essentially it talks about all the research that's coming out now about charter schools in terms of segregation, in terms of disparate discipline for black boys and Latino boys. We already have a problem with school discipline in our public schools, and charters are even worse than what's happening in our public schools. So our standards should be higher for charters. I don't think they should be lower, whether it be school discipline, whether it be school finance, other types of malfeasance. There is a press conference today where superintendents, school board members, policymakers, ACLU, think tanks, they're all coming together in California this morning at 10 a.m. to ask for charter transparency and accountability, because charter said that if we gave them more freedom and more accountability, that we would have a different system. But what actually happened is charters got more freedom and less accountability. And so now I think community groups, whether they be school board members, all these folks are starting to coalesce and say, if you're going to have more freedom, then you need to have more accountability. So, and I think finally, the critics have said that the NAACP is out of touch with the civil rights movement. I've heard folks say that. And So what I did was last week I spent a little time with Martin Luther King. I spent a little time with Malcolm X. I spent a little time with W.E. Du Bois. And they were very clear about what they thought about market-based approaches in public policy. Malcolm X called them blood-sucking and vulturistic. I don't think he could have been any more clear than that.
Wow.
Martin Luther King said that we have socialism for the rich and rugged market capitalism for the poor. W.E. Du Bois said that big business is trying to take over over democracy in our public policy. So I think that with the NAACP stand, this is again my personal opinion, I think the NAACP stand is consistent with the civil rights movements and our civil rights leaders over time. The issues that the NAACP identified in the resolution are consistent with civil rights concerns.
But I want to go back. You said a lot, but to my recollection, the NAACP's position has not always been what it is today. Am I wrong on that? I mean, they've evolved on this issue?
Hello?
Yes, can you hear us? Julian? Denisha?
I'm here. Can you hear me?
Yeah, I can hear you fine.
Yeah, I can't hear Julian either. I'm not.
Okay,
sure
well, I'm gonna give you an opportunity to weigh in, Denisha, since we're having difficulty with Julian on this, because I wanted to ask him about the NAACP's position evolving on to getting around to coming out for a moratorium on charter schools, because my recollection, if it's accurate, I believe they weren't always where they are now on this issue. Is that accurate to your knowledge?
To my knowledge, it is. I don't think they've ever been 100% pro-charter, but I don't think they've ever been they never come out the way they did this time, and that's why it's kind of important. So, Julian might know more about the history of the NAACP and their relationship, but I think this is the first time that they have actually, they have actually come out against the for-profit charter industry, which is a big deal. Because as you said, a lot of the civil rights groups tend to be, for more of the market-based reforms, like Julian was saying. I think when he quoted, past civil rights leaders who were so against a lot of the corporate model, I think we've seen a change with our civil rights leaders where the idea of winners and losers doesn't seem so bad, which is kind of scary. And so I think it's almost revolutionary for what the NAACP has done, given where many civil rights groups stand on issues of charters and testing and privatization.
So I think we have Julian back. Julian?
Sorry about that. What was it?
That's okay. So I wanted you to go back because my recollection, when charters have been around for a long time now, and so my recollection, I recall that the NAACP has not always been where they are today. In the beginning, didn't they have a different position on charters, or am I off base?
Well, I think it's important. Let me tell you a little bit about me. I think that I was in a different place than charter schools 6 years ago. I was a charter school parent. I was an instructor at a charter school in the Bay Area. I donated to a charter school. I served on a charter school board. I volunteered at a charter school. So I think it's okay for us as a society to change our mind, because I think the evidence is coming in on charter schools. In the research literature, in terms of reporting on the malfeasance, the millions of dollars, for example, in Pennsylvania, they were talking about this online charter school where the man took $8 million of public money for vacations and other things. And eventually we find out these things, but by then the money's gone. So I think that over time, of course, folks evolve on this issue. But I think the most recent history on the NAACP, whether it's the 2010 resolution, 2014, or 2016, shows this evolution where it appears that the membership is changing its mind, and I think that's okay. That being said, there are many civil rights organizations in Washington, D.C. that are taking millions and millions of dollars from, essentially industrialists or billionaires, and they're pressing for particular agendas. They're in favor of charter schools. They're in favor of high-stakes testing. And those foundations, whether it be the Gates Foundation, the Broad Foundation, the Walton Family Foundation. They give lots of money to civil rights organizations, and those organizations are very clear that they're in support of the policies that these billionaire foundations are pressing in the public discourse. Really interesting book about this called Policy Patrons by a University of Michigan professor, talking about how these non-democratic foundations have used millions of dollars to press their agenda in education reform.
This is Virginia here. I wanted to ask a question about the evolution of people's positions in terms of what we've been able to understand about the aim of the charter school movement, because I think that a lot of the narrative, I don't want to say hoodwinked people, because I do think that the local control of a school, letting parents or teachers take over a school, was a worthy goal, and that people really believed in that. And so that was a civil rights issue. Yes, we want black communities to be more in control of their schools. The corporate aspect of it just wasn't as clear. So how do we, get control of that?
Well, I think Walmart's a good example of this. Now, it might seem like not answering your question, but what happens to a community, small businesses, small mom and pop, small black-run or businesses when Walmart comes to town? And so the thing is that I had a parent and a school board member email me from Pennsylvania this week, and what they talked about is that was how charters looked 20, 30 years ago, where they were mostly these small community-based local charters. I mean, in Minnesota, where charters were first begun, the boards of charter schools are actually elected, so there's some democratic control of those schools. But what happens when Walmart comes to town? So what happens when these large chains of charters, like in the state of Michigan, for example, the vast majority of charters are for-profit, then those small charter schools go by the wayside. And so I think that's how markets function. So I think the original conception of charters, which was, and I was just talking with a charter operator from LA yesterday, I was in Los Angeles yesterday talking about charter schools. And a small charter operator, she has one charter, she's had that charter for decades, and she says, is she the same thing as these large for-profit charter chains or these large online charter chains? I would say no, but the challenge is that when these large, out-of-town chains come to town, then that threatens this sort of community-based local approach to charters. I'm for democratically controlled community-based charters. I think that it's a great idea. It allows innovation, allows specialization in your curriculum and pedagogy. But the challenge is that that's not the vision. That's not the vision for the system of education. So what happened is that people who really believe in civil rights and community control, they allied with people who really want to see education privately controlled and have opportunities for profit. And that's essentially what a market-based system does, is it allows people to control the finances of education. And so that alliance, I think, is starting to fray a little bit. Those people who are interested in civil rights and those people who are interested in profit, that motley alliance is starting to fray, because the folks that are really interested in civil rights are seeing all these challenges in charter schools. Yet the people who are really interested in profit and privatization, they're still pushing forward.
I want to also go back to one comment that you made that I think might have got lost if we don't pause for a minute. You talked about the original intent, but a few minutes ago you were talking about Milton Friedman. So it depends on whose initial intent we're talking about. There was a concerted effort by kind of an underground set of capitalists who wanted to resegregate the schools, and they did hoodwink people into encouraging black people to or Latinos or special minority groups to go into a particular charter school. So can you say a little about that?
Sure. Yeah, so for example, I don't think, a lot of local community-based charters, that are really interested in innovative approaches to education, I don't think they open their schools saying to themselves, we want to destroy teachers' unions, and we don't want teachers to be able to collectively organize, right? But there are people that that's their intent for supporting charter schools, right? So I think that what we know is that there's a variety of intents that go into charter schools, and some of those intents I think are very genuine and correct. But we also have to understand that the reason why there's so much money behind the charter school movement, like, for example, John Oliver did a hilarious piece on Last Week Tonight about charter schools not too long ago, maybe 2 weeks ago. I laughed and laughed, and it was excellent. Making, something's a social problem when John Oliver talks about it on the show. So, but what was interesting is that the charter school folks created a $100,000 test to create videos in response to this charter school lampooning. And I think this is key because I'm a Detroit fan. And the thing is I used to be in the my Lions went 0-16 just a couple of years ago. And the folks that are critical of charters, we are really the underdogs because all of the money is lined up behind charter schools. The foundations, the elites in the Democratic Party, the elites in the Republican Party. We are the underdogs in this conversation in terms of wanting to have a critical conversation about civil rights violations that are occurring in schools. One example, for example, the ACLU here in California found that more than 20% of schools have illegal policies that essentially result in charter schools being able to do the choosing of students instead of families choosing them. So they put all of these barriers in the way so that they can basically choose which students they want to have. These are the kinds of civil rights violations. So we're not actually in the way of parents getting access to high-quality schools. What we're actually saying is that charters should have accountability and transparency so that families can actually do the choosing instead of the charter schools making the choices themselves.
Julian, I want to say in the interest of transparency, because you came clean. Well, I won't say you came clean, but you shared your evolving on this issue yourself. I just want to mention, and folks have heard me say this before, I was a part of a group here in the District of Columbia who sought a charter. We're all pro DCPS school folks, and we wanted to develop a model, a community-based model that was totally different from the what you see in the charter sector now. And we wanted to show the world how to do this right. And the charter board here in the District of Columbia denied our charter. They said, come back next year and we'll probably approve it. But I knew, because knowing the folks that were on the board, I knew that they really did not want us to be successful, because we were working with the Washington Teachers Union here in the District of Columbia. We were working with all the other stakeholders. We were trying to make this accountable. We wanted to be open and transparent, and we wanted to really show the world how this charter sector should be constructed. And so, everyone was totally discouraged after that. But, people hear me rail against charters. I'm not really against the theory of charter schools. I'm really against what they've morphed into right now.
Yeah, I think really what's key here is democratic control of our public policy. As you saw with prison, we thought it was a really good idea to privatize prison until we didn't think it was a good idea for all the reasons that the Justice
and they're starting to pull back now.
Right. And so this is I talked with a charter operator once, and here's what he told me. He said, I was too young to get involved with the tech bubble. I was too young for the real estate bubble, but I'm not going to miss out in the charter school bubble, which is basically what he told me. And the thing is, I think that we are going down this road because the 7% of schools now in the United States are charter schools. But in places like L.A., California, we have by far the most charter schools. L.A., San Diego, 20% of schools are charter. So in many places, the charter penetration is much, much higher. Mm-hmm. And so I think that's why the moratorium that the membership voted on is important, because I think it's important for us to take stock. The moratorium doesn't mean you're banning charters. What it means is we need to stop and we need to look around. Right. We need to flick our finger, put it in the wind, and take stock.
Yep. You're absolutely right. Julian, we could talk with you all day. I just loved having you on the show, but unfortunately, we've just plumb run out of time. We've reached the bottom of the hour. And I looked at the clock. I'm like, where did the time go? We just got started, But we really appreciate you joining us this morning, and we will certainly have you back because there's more conversation to be had on this subject. Yeah, absolutely, and we really appreciate your thoughtful comments. We applaud your work and the things that you do, and you are always a friend of the show. So anytime you want to come back, please just let us know and you can come back.
Love it. Thanks.
All right. You have a wonderful day.
Have a great day.
All right. All right, folks. As I mentioned, we've reached the bottom of the hour, and so we're going to take a quick break, and we're going to come back, and we're going to be joined by our dear friend Jesse Turner, the Walking Man, and Denisha Jones will remain with us on the show as well, and we'll be talking to her. And so we're certainly glad you're with us today on the Education Town Hall. And if you stay with us, I guarantee you we will be right back.
Balak, and I'm a student at B.U.S Senior High School.
My name is Wallace Bright, and I'm a student at B.U.S Senior High School.
My name is Victoria Hopper, and I'm a student at B.U.S Senior High School.
My name is James Hill, and I'm a student at B.U.S Senior High School.
We've been talking with our peers across the District of Columbia, and we discovered that a lot of them are talking about how they believe that we are not being provided the high-quality education that we know we need and quite frankly deserve.
They are talking about students in other jurisdictions who are, for the most part, learning and being supported in modern facilities and have access to 21st century technology.
We're hearing them say that there are actually 3 public school systems in the district: DCPS West, DCPS East of the River, and public charter schools.
They are saying things like we have been subjected to too many experimental models, unproven educational fads, and countless changes in philosophy and direction.
Some students are talking about how they feel that some of those in charge of our education system talk the good talk about reform and use all the other buzzwords, but at the end of the day, don't really give a damn about academic achievement for all.
Worst of all, everyone is talking about how we don't even have any voice in the public discourse around the direction of our education system.
Until now, because we all listen and share our views on the Education Town Hall, we are thankful that the host Thomas Bird believes that we should have access as well as a megaphone to talk back to the powers that be in the district and in halls of Congress. Join Thomas Bird every Thursday at 11 a.m. for the Education Town Hall, 1480 a.m. Listen live online at weactradio.com.
It's your man Nick Cannon. You know how it is. It's so incredible when we rocking with We Act Radio. Let's get it.
Labor Day weekend in D.C. is Conqueron weekend. Join us, Conqueron West African Dance Company, as we celebrate the traditions of West Africa during our 33rd annual National African Dance and Drum Conference and Concert this coming Labor Day weekend. This year's production is Jamano, Roots, which celebrates the story of the people of the Casamance region of Senegal, calling for us all to go back to our roots and celebrate the values that make us stronger together. The concert takes place Saturday, September 3rd at 8 p.m. at George Washington University's Lisner Auditorium. For more information, you can visit www.kankoUran.org. That's www.conqueron.org. We hope to see you.
I'm Tom Matsey, founder and CEO of Ethical Electric. We're America's only progressive clean energy company. We support the causes you care about every day when you pay your power bill. And so we think people, when they want to support something good like clean energy, they also don't want to support dirty energy politics. And so we offer a way to get off both dirty energy and get off of dirty energy politics. We're talking about companies who gave money, to Rick Perry, the infamous Texas climate denier. That's the company that owns the largest kind of quote-unquote green energy company in New York right now, Green Mountain Energy. Ethical Electric gives you clean energy for your home. You can support progressive causes when you pay your power bill. You don't have to give all of your money to dirty energy anymore. You can get off both dirty energy and get off dirty energy companies. We Act Radio, powered by Ethical Electric. Do something.
This is Virginia Spatz, feature reporter on We Act Radio's Education Town Hall. Add your voice to local and national education issues by listening Thursdays at 11 Eastern Time and by contributing your thoughts on our blog, We Act Ed, that's WEACTED.wordpress.com. We Act Radio, powered by Ethical Energy.
Hi, I'm Denise Rolark Barnes, publisher of the Washington Informer newspaper, and you've asked whether I think a show on education is a good idea for the District of Columbia, and I would give an unequivocal yes, it is. Information is power, we always know that, but information about education, resources, the politics, the finances, the what our young people could and should be achieving and what should be taught in the classroom is an exceptional. You can't talk enough about it. Let me just say that. And I'm so glad that you are having the show. Continue to do the good work that you're doing. And folks out there, you just keep listening. If there's something you don't hear on the show, I'm sure that the folks here would love to hear from you, and make sure it's a topic for an upcoming show. So keep on listening.
All right. Welcome back to the Education Town Hall here on We Act Radio. It's Thursday morning, September the 1st, 2016. We're coming to you live from the heart of historic Anacostia here in Southeast Ward 8, Washington, D.C., down the street from the Big Chair. All right. Go to our next guest, our dear friend Jesse Turner. I'm going to swing over to Virginia Spatz for a public service announcement.
George Hawkins, the CEO of DC Water, will join We Act Radio next Wednesday, September 7th at 5 p.m. to address lead in the water and its effect on children. Also, next Thursday, September the 8th, the Education Town Hall hopes to focus on this same crucial issue.
Yes, indeed. Yes, indeed. It's a crucial issue, and we have yet to talk about it, and so we need to bring it to the forefront here on the Education Town Hall. And since we're talking about PSAs, I just want to mention again, folks, the Black Love Festival is coming up on September 18th, 2016 from 11 a.m. to 7 p.m. There's going to be a tribute to Black Lives Matter. It's going to be held at the Gateway DC Pavilion, which is located on Martin Luther King Avenue near the intersection of Malcolm X. If you want more information, you can go to blacklovefest.com. That's black, L-U-V, fest, F-E-S-T.com. blacklovefest.com for more information. All right. I forgot to mention at the top of the show that this is the bus show. For folks who are unfamiliar with that, that's Badass Teachers United Opt-Out and Save Our Schools, B.U.S. So we're glad that you're on the bus with us today. And speaking of bus, I'm coming up with the walking man now, Jesse Turner. Good morning, Jesse. How you doing, sir?
Good morning, Brother Thomas. I'm doing fine. It's a kind of rainy, humid day in Connecticut anyway.
Yeah, same here.
Yeah, it's not raining, but it's dreary. You know, I have on all black today in recognition of the dreary day. and Denisha, you still with us?
Yes, I'm here.
All righty. So, Jesse, you're coming on to talk about SOS reflections and plans for the coalition. So, I'm going to go ahead and let you get started, and then I'll bring Denisha in. We'll just go on and have a conversation around that.
Sure, perfect. Our reflections, we've been reflecting on the People's March for Public Education and Social Justice. And we are proud that the coalition pulled together an exciting array of speakers and people from all across the country that look like America. Yeah. So in 2011, when SOS went to D.C., Brother Thomas, it was mainly a podium of white speakers, and it was mainly focused on testing. It was more than that, but that's, if we wanted to look at the general overarching theme, that's what it was in 2011. Mm-hmm. In 2016, it was black, white, yellow, brown. We had Reverend Barber there. We had Bishop Selders, these are Moral Monday and Black Lives leaders. We had the fabulous Denisha. We had Julian, who you just had on. We had Yehuda Williams. We just had young people, people of color, people across the spectrum, and we're so proud of that. That's the coalition we wanted to build. We can't beat these ed reformers if we're an all-white, opposition, or an all-black opposition, or an all-brown opposition. We need to be a united opposition to beat them. So that's what we're most proud of. And the work, moving forward, what SOS is working on is, one, respecting our coalition members. Brother G2 and Journey for Justice were in D.C. They don't need to join the coalition to do the good work. They're doing the good work every day. Mm-hmm. They're fighting the battle. So we want them to continue to fight their battle. Same thing with badass teachers, same thing with SOS to do their work. With all the groups that came, the North Students Union, we want people to continue, coalition members to do their work. And what we're talking about now is, how do we support it? How do we get our members to show up for them, to support them and to help them in the efforts? Because this is all one work now. This is a work. We're talking about social justice now. We're talking about equity and justice for our children, and this unites us all. So the SOS now is moving to a piece where we say, can we have a central calendar? The bats are going to Seattle next year. How do we support that? Can we go there? Can we advertise it? Can we push it? United Opt-Out is going to Houston. How do we support it? How do we do that? So that's where we're moving now. How, not necessarily at the moment for another coalition event, but at the moment to find ways to support our brothers and sisters in this struggle.
I think that's a wonderful approach, Jesse, because, we've got to leverage what the coalition is about and what the coalition is doing. And we leverage our activities by working with other groups and other coalitions. And I think that's a great strategic move to start supporting all the other groups that are doing basically the same work. And they might be in a slightly different space, but it's all about social justice. And I think that's a great strategy. And so, because I think we've got to take this to the next level. I mean, we could come together once a year here in D.C. and we can do mock trials, we can do marches, we can do rallies and those types of things. But we've got to start to really dig deep, because the forces that are against us are well equipped in terms of financially and the ideology, and so we've got to really push back very hard. So that I think that's a great strategy. And so, Denisha, I wanted you to kind of reflect on this past SOS coalition day here in July. Well, we're in September.
I can't believe it was that long ago.
I know.
I just agree with everything Jeff said. It's important that we came together as a coalition for that event, and now we want to extend that. And I think what I got out of it is, after this conference at Howard University that Saturday, we were doing a workshop on how we use social media as a platform to really get the issues out. And so one of the speakers was Bishop John Selders, and he was sitting in our workshop, and he was just kind of amazed at our Twitter capacity, our Facebook capacity, and really spoke about how the groups he works with, they don't have that kind of social media ability to do that work. So they would really like us to kind of support them. So that's the way, I think the coalition could be really beneficial to a lot of really grassroots groups who have important events, have important work, but just don't have the networking capacity, like big groups like the Badass Teachers and Network for Public Education. So I really see it as a way of us being able to support them. And that's really exciting to me because, yes, I enjoy marching and I enjoy protesting and I enjoy blogging and talking, but what I really want to do is support the people on the ground doing that day-to-day work in the community, which many of us don't, we're not in those communities, so we're not doing that work. So I think the coalition can serve that potential. Like you said, how do we help the folks go into the Selma event in March? How do we support the bats when they're in Seattle, United Opt-Out when they're in Houston next month? It's a way to just keep doing what we're doing, but I think we'd be stronger if we work together instead of in our own little silos where we're doing the same work, but we're not sharing in the kind of the strength and numbers that we have.
Yeah, I think we all agree on that. And so I was wondering, I'm sitting here thinking, I was wondering, going forward, I mean, is there a time when we try to knit together everybody and bring everyone together for an event, or do we just work with them and the work that they do and maybe not try to bring everybody together? I was just wondering out loud on that.
That was a big question that was raised because we came together and everyone thought we should, but I think we also, coalitions are complex because every group is doing their own thing and we don't want to overstep. So it takes a lot to plan a big national event. So I would like to see the coalition go do a national event for everyone to come together, but maybe every other year or every 3 years, so that in the meantime, the individual organizations can keep doing their event. We don't want to stretch ourselves too thin. If the events are going to Seattle in June, can we really expect everyone to come to DC again in July, right? It's gonna tax our resources. So a lot of organizations do conferences every year. Free Minds, Free People come to mind. I went to their event last year in Oakland. Now I'm on the planning committee because it's going to be next year in Baltimore. And so I think the every other year model kind of works because it's in between you could do other things. So we're going to still hash that all out when the coalition meets and then kind of figure out what that looks like. But I think, yes, we definitely want to bring people together again, but maybe not on a yearly basis.
Denisha, this is Virginia here. I wanted to ask a question about the coalition building and what goes on between the big meetings, like how communication between the different groups can help people's perspectives change. I think that if people are working on a opt-out issue in one location, they can be kind of siloed off from what's happening in another location. Can you just speak a little bit to how the coalition helps people share their perspectives?
Yeah, so one of the things that we talked about doing is having like a master calendar of events, right? So one person would be in charge of like receiving the events. So like when we have something coming up, and especially those small local events that happen like on a 6 p.m. on a Wednesday, that you could mobilize local people if they just knew about it, right? So like for instance, we have the Florida opt-out group that Becky runs, and so they can help get people at local events by putting it on a shared calendar. And so then everybody would be asked to share that event with those groups. So that's one way of networking the information. Another way is just supporting each other. I mean, BATS is an advocacy action group, so we plan actions every month based on, a lot of it is supporting what our other allies are doing. So one of the organizations is ARROS, Alliance to Reclaim Our Schools, and they plan these walk-ins to schools. And so they have one coming up in October. So one of the BATS actions is to help promote the ARROS event. And even though right now ARROS is not part of this coalition, it's just an example for how we work. So we would hope that another coalition organization might help promote the BATS event in Seattle and get that information out. Anytime we have an opportunity to kind of share the views where we agree on, then we reach out to each other to either be on our panels, attend some of our events and speak on those issues, right? So that way it shows. And we don't always have the same views on issues, right? I think that was one of the things that Julian mentioned, which I think is really important. My views on charter schools have evolved. When they first were proposed, I thought it was a wonderful idea, and I to do what they've done. And so I think now I'm agreeing that we need to step back and then look at the model that we have and does it work. So each organization might have a different view on different things. So we're not demanding 100% full alignment to agree with everything everyone's doing. We're just asking that you support when you can. And when you do share similar views, kind of put together when you can so that we can reach a broader audience.
And I wanted to ask Jesse, too, about the idea of coalition building and sharing perspectives, because I thought it was really important what you said about the difference between 2011 and 2016. So how do you build the coalitions that really get people to expand their perspectives?
So one of the things that we're learning to do is to see the bigger picture. If our children spend 13% of their lives from 5 to 18 in school, 87% is outside school. So 87% of what makes their lives is happening in the community. So we're working on understanding that bigger picture. So when people talk about Black Lives Matter, that impacts what happens in our schools. When people talk about poverty, that impacts what happens in our schools. We're making the connection. Really, the connection is we've learned it. Save Our Schools has consistently gone down to Selma, Alabama, to the Selma Jubilee. It was no accident that Sister Rose Fire Sanders came up to D.C. to be one of our speakers. Sister Rose runs the Jubilee. We've been going down there for I think it's 5 years now, and she has educated SOS that you must see the bigger picture. You must make the connection between tracking children. You must make the connection between poverty. You must make the connection between race. You must make the connection between justice, not only in our schools, but our communities. So that's where the coalition is growing. We understand now it's more than just the testing. If you took away the testing tomorrow, you're not a real social activist. You're not a fighter for justice if you go away. Because this injustice is still in our schools. It's not just testing. It's so many things.
So Jesse and Denisha, I want to kind of go back a bit here, because it may have been a while since we've shared with the listening audience just what Badass Teachers United Opt Out and Save Our Schools stands for. I mean, there are 3 unique organizations, but you have different missions. So I'm trying to just remind folks of what each organization mission is about and what their goals are. So can we talk a little bit, Denisha, since you're a member of Badass Teachers Association, why don't you share about that, and then Jesse, you can chime in with Save Our Schools, and Denisha, if you want to talk about United Opt Out as well.
Yeah, so Badass Teachers is a really a grassroots kind of advocacy organization. We were growing. A lot of people see us as just kind of like a Facebook group, but we're an actual nonprofit. I'm a board member on there. And so we were kind of really founded to give voice to teachers, because what we realized is a lot of the reform stuff was being done to teachers without sharing it. So part of what we've talked about, our vision is that this organization is for every teacher who refuses to be blamed for the failure of our society to erase poverty and inequality, and refuse to accept assessments, tests, and evaluations imposed by those who have contempt for real teaching and learning. So starting as a place where people can just come and share their frustrations, to a place where we engage in act. We have over 50,000 members. We are able to help, persuade politicians to hear our side. We're able to help support people in the community, and we take a variety of issues. We do have a list of things that we like to see: student-driven policies, elimination of high testing, a more balanced curriculum. But we support a lot of the major issues like opting out and against high-stakes testing. We're concerned about for-profit charter change. We'd like to see schools, do away with racist disciplinary practices and a colonized curriculum, and get to a place that we can have really equitable schools. And so there's a lot of different issues, but it all comes really down to getting us out of this privatization of school control that we're in right now.
Yeah, and so I'm going to let Jesse, I want you to chime in, but I think, sometimes we have to remind ourselves exactly, okay, what are we doing? What are our goals? And so people know exactly what we stand for. Sometimes we forget they hear BUS and they hear these acronyms and stuff, and they're like, what is that all about? So sometimes I think we should just pause and just remind folks that this is the space we're in, and this is what we're trying to accomplish. So Jesse, talk a little bit about the mission and goals of Save Our Schools.
So first, I'd like people to be able to find us. So you can just do www.saveourschoolsmarch.org. And we are a nonprofit organization. And we have some guiding principles. And our guiding principles are equitable funding across all public schools and school systems, an end to high-stakes testing used for the purpose of student, teacher, and school evaluation, with teacher, family, and community leadership informing public education policies. We believe that curriculum should be responsive and inclusive of local communities, and we believe that all children deserve professional, qualified, and committed teachers in all public schools. If I break it all down, what it means, we know that ever since day one of our public schools, this nation has never had equity for black, brown, and poor children. We know that. and we're fighting for that. And that's number one for us. We oppose high-stakes testing in the connection to eugenics, the connection that children are more than test scores. And if you're evaluating our teachers and our students based on test scores alone, that's unjust. And when we think about the move to charters, the move to magnets and special schools and school choice, we have the position that choice without equity is an immoral choice. We've always had that. And when we think about curriculum, it's most important to us that we know what would stimulate learning with our children. And it's a curriculum that's responsive to who they are, where they live, and we don't have that. We don't have that in our country. It's not responsive. And then finally, we're well aware that that when we look at communities of color and poor communities, rural and urban, what we find is that's where they send the unqualified teachers. That's where they send the drive-by teachers, the TFAs, the emergency hires. They don't send these teachers to our affluent and wealthy schools. So we are fighting for professional, qualified, and committed teachers in all our schools. So those are just some of the things about us.
And I don't know which one of you, or both of you, want to just chime in a little bit about the work of United Opt-Out.
I can do that because I'm also on the board there. So United Opt-Out has to opt out in advance. So a lot of people think they're just about the testing, but it's not. Opting out of testing is one of the major areas that we were founded on, but it's opting out of, again, this whole system of corporate private education reform. So on our website, which is unitedoptoutnational.org, we talk about the movement to end corporate education reform and serving as the point of unyielding resistance. And so part of that is the first step is to opt out of the high-stakes testing. You see it's like a domino effect, right? If we can get a massive group of people to opt out of the testing, they can opt out of the test prep, they can opt out of the test curriculum, and get back to real teaching and learning. So we see it as a way to knock down, but it doesn't just stop with testing, right? Like Jesse said, we want equitably funded, democratically based, anti-racist, desegregated schools for everyone. And so United Opt-Out works in different areas on the ground. A lot of what we're looking at is pushing back against what we see as some harm in the new every student's feedback and getting back to the original intent. Because if you look at the history, the Elementary and Secondary Education Act was not about, testing mandates. It was really about helping level the playing field between schools that, didn't have the same type of funding as other schools. Essentially, we got so far away from that, where we're coming up with all of these gimmicks to kind of entice children to learn in ways that are false. And so part of, we're looking at a big part of that. And also, as we think about opt-out, what does that mean? What does opt-out mean for communities of color? How do we get this work in those communities? As you probably heard, people who support testing opt-out for being a white movement that only white middle-class women can engage in. That is on one level true, but it doesn't have to be, right? Opting out is not civil disobedience. And nobody knows more about civil disobedience than poor Black and brown communities, right? So we want to show them that this is a way they can reclaim control of their schools and their district when it's away taken from them. And they're the ones most affected by high-stakes testing because testing is also to close their schools and to open up more for-profit charters. So that's kind of the work that we're focusing on now, especially with the Tech in Houston, with civil rights and testing as well, too. But we also remain multifaceted. We want to join the campaign to end Citizens United. That's a big part of this issue. People want to just focus on education, but if we don't get this money out of politics, we're never going to be able to win this war. So we do take a broad stance on the issue.
All right, Denisha, you took us. I was hoping to have a moment to ask y'all your favorite moments, but we've just plumb run out of time. And so we want to thank you. When I say we, I'm talking about the Education Town Hall here on We Act Radio. I want to thank you, Jesse Turner, and you, Denisha Jones, for joining us on the show today, the Bus Show. B.U.S, folks, Badass Teachers, United Opt-Out, Save Our Schools. We do this every fourth Thursday, but if you look up, today is the first Thursday, but we did some rescheduling. We will have another bus show at the end of this month on the fourth Thursday. So we're glad that you tuned in with us today. Until next Thursday, because we're going to be talking about lead in the water here in the district and regionally and nationally. And so we hope you can join us. Until then, have a great week. For engineer Ron Pinchback, feature reporter Virginia Spash, this is your humble servant and host Thomas Bird. Peace.